Welcome back to the Constitution in 3 minutes. Last time we left off with July 16th, the day that the delegates decided to accept what is called the Connecticut Compromise, which establishes proportional representation in the House as well as the origination of money bills and equal representation in the Senate. This is a compromise. Neither side gets exactly what they want. Madison argues that his side doesn't get quite enough because they had already decided on proportional representation in the House. Mr. Randolph, after they have taken this vote, he rises up and he says that the vote of this morning had embarrassed the business extremely. So even after the compromise is passed, there's argument immediately. He even calls for them quitting and going home, and some members ask him if he means for good or just for the day. He finally relents and says that he just means for the day. He argues that if the delegates from New York were here, the other two delegates who had left, Mr. Yates and Mr. Lansing, if they had quorum and were allowed to vote, then this never would have passed. So they end up deciding to leave for the day after some discussion about what should come next. And Madison has an interesting note in his version of the notes at the convention. He says that the following morning, the members from the larger states, they met to think about what should be done in the face of this compromise because they had lost. And what he says is that time was wasted in vague conversation on the subject without any specific proposition or agreement. So the large states people are at a loss. They have no idea how they can overcome the small states people. Now, we're going to fast forward a little bit. The next big issue that happens is the issue of slavery, or how slaves in the southern states are going to be represented. The people in the north who don't like slavery, they want slaves to be represented as zero persons for the sake of representation, because they believe that if you give slaves representation, if you count them as population for the sake of representation, they're not actually going to be given any rights. What actually is going to happen is that the Southerners are going to increase their power in Congress and pass laws with that power that will more greatly entrench slavery. On the other hand, the Southern states, they want their slaves to count as one full person for the sake of representation, not because they want to give them rights, but because they want more power in Congress. The first time that this comes up is August 8th, and Mr. Gouverneur Morris rises up. They're talking about the language around persons represented, and he moved to insert free before the word inhabitants. Much, he said, would depend on this point. He never would concur in upholding domestic slavery. It was a nefarious institution. It was the curse of heaven on the states where it prevailed. They finally come to a full discussion of this on August 22nd.